Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan. It's time for another You Made Me Watch, and this time you made me watch Before Sunrise, the romantic drama from 1995, a hugely critically acclaimed and beloved movie by Richard Linklater that's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a movie that I had never heard of before my good buddy Conner Nielsen told me about it not too long ago. Conner requested this movie, and I want to say thanks a lot to him for finally making me sit down and take a look at it. When Conner and I did our favorite movies by genre video while he was here a few weeks ago, he listed this as his, I believe, favorite romance, or in his list of favorite romances, and I didn't have a real great pick for that. I found myself having to go to genre things because a lot of romantic movies, just straight up romances, what some people consider chick flicks, that kind of thing, just haven't stuck with me a lot, the ones that I've seen, and I had a hard time thinking of one that I liked enough to put that at the top of the list, and I really wish that I had seen this movie, because this is absolutely the thing that I would have picked. This is one of those movies that I feel like is going to be kind of part of my chemical makeup, that, resonated with me a lot, that meant a lot to me while I was watching it, and that I feel weird about having not seen before, and I'll, move on kind of wondering how I, went through 36 plus years of my life having never seen this movie. This is the most authentic and romantic thing I've probably ever experienced. It's a nigh perfect movie in my mind. I have a couple little quibbles with it that I'll probably think to mention a little bit later, but by and large, I had a kind of magical experience with this. This is not a movie that will resonate with everybody, probably. It's really going to depend on the time of life that you're in, the relationships that you've had, whether you're in a relationship now and whether that's working out or not, etc., etc. It's going to depend on, of course, your sensibilities in whether or not you appreciate something this introspective and kind of stream of consciousness. But the thing that immediately struck me about this movie is how quickly it seemed to grasp what it feels like when you have this immediate connection with a person and the kind of out-of-body experience that you can have. This is just the consummate, perfect kind of first date sort of movie, and it's a little bit more than a first date thing or a first impression experience, because the point of this is to kind of deal with the perception of reality and kind of stepping outside of the world you live in and experiencing even time differently when you meet that perfect person that it feels like maybe a soulmate that you should. And I love how not sappy about all of that this is, by the way. I'm talking about it on a level that's going to make it sound sappier than the movie actually is. It does such a good job of avoiding cliche and triteness. But anyway, it's about how sometimes you'll meet that perfect person and you'll have such a wonderful connection, but because of logistics and circumstances and just life stuff, you might never see them again, or you're not going to be able to spend your life with them. And I have experienced that in my life. I was really young the first time that happened to me, but I remember, not to get too much into personal stuff, this resonated with me on a number of levels. With my current relationship, of course, with my wife, who I've been together with for a lot of years, but also other things from earlier in my life too. When I was like 12 or 13, I was on a trip with my dad and my stepmom. They used to like to go to casinos, and we would go to Tunica, Mississippi, and we would visit some of the casinos there. And they had, back then, some really great stuff for kids, a lot of really fun arcades and things. And so I loved going on those trips. And Dad would sometimes drop us off for a while at one of these kind of, arcades slash just like kind of, for lack of a better term, like kind of daycare kind of places. And there was this girl that I met there that I hit it off with, and we just had this connection, and we spent the whole day together, and I didn't want to leave, and I hated the idea that I would never see this girl again. And when we left, I didn't think I would see her again. And then for whatever reason, we ended up that day. I remember going back to that place for a while, and I got to hang out with her for like a half an hour more, and that almost made it worse. We didn't exchange phone numbers or anything. We didn't know more than each other's first names, and that was it. I never saw her again. I don't even remember what her name is now, and that was really difficult. And that's what this movie kind of is about. There is this wonderful ticking time bomb through this movie where this couple, or these two people that don't know each other at all, this is about anonymity. One is Jesse, the guy, and Celine. They meet on a train, and it's this kind of weird set of circumstances that if this happens to you, you look back and you're like, if this thing, sort of like a butterfly effect thing, if this thing didn't happen and start the set of dominoes, we never would have met, and we never would have thought to get off this train and spend an evening together. And there's this couple on this train that is arguing and bickering and being obnoxious in German, and neither of these people speak German or well. And at one point, the couple leaves, and these two sit together and start talking for a moment. And then when the couple comes back, Celine and Jesse decide to go onto the dining car where it's quieter and it's not awkward, where they have to listen to this married couple just screaming at each other. And one thing leads to another, and when the train stops, they decide to get off at Vienna together, and it's just this crazy notion. We both have nothing to do tonight, and he doesn't have enough money even for a hotel, so he was just going to walk around Vienna until it was time for his plane trip back to the States. She's French, and he's American, and they both happen to be on the same train from Budapest. And so they both get off at Vienna and start walking around the city, and they're just really contemplative and introspective and talk about everything under the sun. And this is an incredibly thought-provoking movie that has a lot of wonderful commentary from different angles on a whole bunch of different topics. And the way this movie is written, by the way, is really interesting, because it's Linkletter and then an actress that had been in a couple of his movies, like Dazed and Confused, which, by the way, I have reviewed on You Made Me Watch, and did not care for that movie. That's another slice of life kind of thing that just didn't really resonate with me, that a lot of people really love. And I'm starting to get the Linkletter thing after seeing this movie, because I adored this thing. But her name, the other writer, is Kim Krizan, and I read a little bit about this. Linkletter said that he wanted to get a female voice in on this to make the woman seem authentic enough and have a different perspective from the male character. And this is very much an opposites attract kind of thing, where they have really interesting, contrasting ideas about things. And there are, of course, like a lot of couples, places where they line up and places where they don't, but they're very, very different people that agree on certain things, but come to those things for totally different reasons. And all of that is really fascinating. We explore, people who are different because of their genders, because of their backgrounds, because of their belief systems, etc., etc. And it does explore differences between the sexes, but it's not as simple as he's a guy, so he's into these things or has these ideas. She's a girl and she has, these other ideas. It's, certainly more complicated than that, and about a lot more things than that. But it's also about, contradictions and ways in which everybody is hypocritical. And you think you're looking at archetypes, and then it's just more complicated than that. It looks at first like almost a Mulder and Scully sort of thing, where you have not exactly the believer and the skeptic, but in a more personal exploration of relationships. It's it initially looks like you have a cynic and an optimist. And what you really have is a person who wears a mask of an optimist and a mask of a cynic, where the guy, Jesse, is seems like a cynic, but he's actually, very much a hopeless romantic, and he's cynical in certain ways and really hopeful in other ways, and she's that way as well. And by the end of it, the way I was reading it, and I'm going to not give too much away on this one, because I really suggest everybody look at this. I think there's something here for everyone, even if it doesn't resonate with you as much as it did for me. But at the end of the day, I think what you really have here is, by and large anyway, a guy in Jesse who is, like, kind of optimistic, with individuals, or no, who is optimistic. I got it backwards. He's hopeful and optimistic about the world at large, ultimately, even though he kind of pretends like he isn't. But he is pessimistic when it comes to individuals. He doesn't trust. He doesn't trust a person, but he trusts people. And the girl, Celine, is kind of the opposite of that. She will trust an individual, and really naive kind of way, but people at large, humanity, she's not sure about. That's my read on a first viewing. I could be wrong about that, but that's what it seemed like at the end of the day. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. There are scenes where Jesse is really skeptical of people he meets, particularly who are asking for money for any reason, and he assumes that people are trying to swindle or hoodwink them. And Celine is, again, maybe naively, always assuming that they have the best of intentions and doesn't like that Jesse feels the way he does about them. But when you find out about their personal backgrounds, you start to see that Jesse is... he was with this girl who ends up kind of taking complete advantage of him, who he, thought he had a kind of decent relationship with, but then they spent time apart, and once he came to visit her in Europe, she had kind of moved on and was just pretending like they were still a couple, and he ended up breaking things off with her and just, running off. And you contrast that with Celine's relationship, where she was with a guy who she didn't really, even like all that much, but felt like he needed her. And so she, as she says, like, loved him too much, like almost more than he deserved. And so you have a girl who gave a guy the benefit of the doubt, even though he, in her eyes later, pretty clearly didn't deserve it. And then you have a guy who has been burned because he's been taken advantage of, who is really kind of skeptical of just individuals, but he has this romantic notion of what relationships are supposed to be at large. Anyway, it's really interesting comparing and contrasting these characters, and I'm already getting in an analysis place because I just can't help myself. But like I said, I don't want to give too much away about this. This is not a real plotty movie, of course. Like I said, it's a slice of life thing. It's a stream of consciousness thing, but not as much as I expected it to be, because it also is very much a story. I see this movie, and I think it could put people off where they're like, but what is the plot? What is the conflict? There's not anything happening. And there absolutely is. It's just pretty subtle about it, and it's about the single evening. The whole thing takes place, it's almost in real time. There are places where we kind of cut, between the characters walking and then getting to a place. But, even if it isn't like 24 fully real time. It really feels that way, and the conversations absolutely are. I could see a person getting kind of frustrated halfway into this, going, again, there's nothing happening, there doesn't seem to be anything at stake. It might feel to a person like a My Dinner with Andre, but with two people in romance that have just met each other, as opposed to a couple of friends that haven't seen each other in a long time meeting over dinner. And there are a lot of comparisons to be made between those two movies, certainly. That is a kind of, exploration and treatise on our relationship with art and our perception of reality through the art we make and the art we consume. And it's about a lot of other things too, but that's a lot of the crux of that movie. And this is about our perception of time and ourselves through the people that we meet and associate with and the relationships we have. And I think by its very nature, it ends up having to have a little bit more of the real honest to God traditional story than something like My Dinner with Andre, because it's about these people meeting for the first time, and inherently there's something at stake because there's something they both want out of that. With My Dinner with Andre, it's two totally different people who want different things in their lives, and there is maybe a little bit of self-discovery there, in that they open each other's eyes to ideas that they haven't necessarily explored before. But the end of that night is just, we stop having dinner together, we've maybe learned a few things, we both go home. In this, again, there's that ticking time bomb, and these two characters both want the same thing, and both are not working to achieve it because they don't think that they can really get it, but then by the end of the day, they actually kind of do end up doing that. And so the idea is, they both want to, and this is the way in which it's a traditional story and not just a slice of life kind of picture, because stories about people who want something and trying to achieve it, and then there's usually some kind of opportunity for change, and they learn something about themselves, or we learn something about them through that experience. This does, at the end of the day, absolutely have that. It's just not driven by a complex outlined plot. So they both want to be able to continue this relationship, and to not leave the bubble that they feel like they've made for themselves. That feeling of, we went to this city that we've not been to before, and we're exploring it, and we've stepped out of our lives, we've stepped out of our reality into this other. They want that to not end, and they want to be able to, or at the very least, they wish that they could, when they step back into reality, step back into it together. And I found myself completely enraptured in all of that. This sucked me in more than anything has in a really long time, where I was really invested in their relationship and wanted them to be able to stay together at the end, and was crushed as it more and more felt like that wasn't going to be possible. And by the end of the movie, I won't give this away, but they kind of come up with a compromise, or a way to maybe make things continue, but they're not going to be able to stay together, right away in the here and now. And I was just really surprised by how taken in to all of that I was, and how easy it was to insert myself in this relationship and feel like one of these characters with the other. I had a very similar thing to this with my wife. That was the other personal experience I wanted to share. When Sarah and I first dated, or first started dating, I invited her out for coffee, and it was one of those situations where you lose track of time, you're not looking at your watch. One detail I like a lot in this, by the way, is toward the beginning of the movie, these two who don't know each other, and they're not even kindling a romance yet, they're just feeling each other out and spending time together. They walk up to a couple of guys who are speaking German in Vienna when they first get off the train. And they ask these guys what is fun to do in Vienna. And they invite them to a play that the couple, I think, absolutely intends on going to. And it isn't until the end of the movie that they remember the play. And I kept waiting for it. I was like, there's going to be a scene where they go to this play, right? It never happens. And I was like, did we drop that? Is this movie so not concerned with plot that we completely forgot we even did that? And then you get toward the end of the movie, and there's a mention of it, where I forget which. Jesse or Salim, one goes, we totally forgot to go to those guys' play. And I don't think that that's, because at first I was thinking the movie just realized that it didn't have them go there, and it's covering its tracks so that you don't think that it forgot about that. I don't think that's what's happening. I think that's intentional. I think it's about losing time. Stepping out of yourself, having that total out of body experience. They're not completely in that alternate dimension where it's just the two of them and nothing else exists until really I'd say the Ferris wheel. There's a scene where they of course have their first kiss, and okay, I am spoiling some things. I am giving some things away. Hopefully not too much, but this movie is too much fun to talk about. I'm having a difficult time not getting into the trenches with it. But they at the beginning are just trying to figure out what they're going to do together, and they discover a lot of joy in simply challenging each other in intellectual conversation, which I really appreciate. And again, that's what my wife and I really had when we first met and we first started dating. So we had that thing where we went to a park and we're walking around a trail there, and we just talked for 3 straight hours and completely lost track of time. And the difference, of course, is that we didn't have to go back to respective countries at the end of the night, or the next day or whatever. And we were able to continue our relationship and are still together to this day. But it made me really long for the feelings of the beginning of a relationship like that. Because, man, you take it for granted as it's happening, and you just are never able to experience that again. I think one of the only things that is a drawback, for lack of a better word, that just kind of sucks about being in a really stable, really loving, wonderful relationship with another person, like I have with my wife, is I know I will never experience that again. And it's like anything that is a wonderful first experience. There's no going back and having it all over again, and you wish you could. And I think everybody probably kind of longs for that a little bit, that has had that, and is out of the dating scene, and is confident that their relationship now is solid enough that they'll never do that again. And that is, of course, a wonderful thing. I wouldn't trade my relationship with my wife for the world. We've been together almost 20 years, married for 13, and we have kids. We have a wonderful family together, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. But I do sometimes wish I could get in a time machine. I do wish sometimes it was possible to go back and experience those first few dates again, when you're that period of discovery, when you don't know everything there is to know about that person, and when everything is new and exciting, and you just keep landing on all of these different things that you have in common, but also those interesting things that challenge each other as well. I really love the exploration of all of that in this movie, where as the film progresses, this couple, of course, gets to know each other more and more, and you have that great kind of transition from, we just all in a single evening, from I'm enraptured in this person, I'm fascinated by this person, I want to live in their world, to, oh, the seams are starting to show. There are some things about this other person that I don't care for. and I'm realizing that they're a human being. And there's a lot of conversations about that, where Celine, at one point says, why do people try to avoid conflict so much? Some wonderful things come from conflict. Conflict is very important. You have to have that. And there's a place where they finally kind of drop their shields and again challenge each other and force the other person to say something that they're not appreciating about the other person, and that makes the relationship feel a lot more real both to them and to the audience, and they completely come back from it. They become a stronger couple because they went through that and because there's not pretense. And I found that whole thing also really refreshing. But back to this idea of you're never able to experience that first date again. You also can never experience that the first time you watch something that had or read something that had a profound impact on you like this. Watching this movie was like a first date for me with the movie. And it was really bittersweet when I got to the end of it, because I'm sure I'll go back to this movie and I'll enjoy watching it again, but knowing where all the conversations go and where the couple goes at the end and everything, I'll never be able to experience this, of course, the same way I did the first time. That's true of everything. This is one of those movies where I can talk about academically what I think really works about it and why on a technical level or a storytelling level it's such a strong piece of art. But I cared as much about the way it was making me feel the first time, that experience I was having with it, if that makes any sense, as much as the academics of it. And it's I don't know, it just sucks that you can never go back and have exactly that same experience with it again. I'm excited that this movie has sequels. I knew that this was the first of the Before trilogy. They come back and make 2 more of these, but the way I understood it before, I don't know why I thought this, I thought that each of the other movies was maybe about a different couple that kind of did the same sort of thing, but explored, different characters and different aspects of humanity. It's the same characters again, and I didn't know I was going to get to see that. And if I had not, if Connor hadn't told me that I don't think he's seen the third one, but if Connor hadn't told me that he really liked the second one, I would be really leery of that. But if he appreciated this for any of the reasons that I did, and liked that second one, then I'm more relieved and more excited about seeing that and getting to have a first-time experience with these characters again. But yeah, like I said, it's a really profound movie in a lot of ways. I enjoyed it for the actual story it told, and like I said, I really appreciated that it is an honest to God story, even though the plot is sometimes kind of non-existent, and it's just not about a complex plot. But I also really appreciated it for all of the diatribes and conversations about mortality and life and religion and again, especially relationships and how we perceive people. There were things that I've never thought about before, that this movie kind of opened my eyes to, and it's a 25-year-old movie, 95, yeah, and some things in this that I'd never really considered before. There's this great, I think kind of toward the beginning, there's this great speech that, yeah, because I think this is while they're on the bus, when they first get off the train. I forget, but it's toward the beginning, where Jesse is talking about the idea of reincarnation, and it's. I also really appreciate, by the way, the subtlety and nuance in the way in which the characters are kind of feeling each other out and conversing with each other before they're really getting to know each other versus when they're more comfortable with each other. All of that is really genuine and believable. I always feel like these are real people that are coming up with improvised dialogue on the spot, while simultaneously it's really clear that this is a meticulously scripted thing. It's really cool that both of those things can be true, where I can tell this was a really thought this was a really well thought out piece, but but there was a lot of care in making the people in it, these two characters feel real and feel authentic and feel like they're just coming up with what they're saying as they're saying it. So he's kind of tiptoeing around religion a little bit with her, and he's like, I don't know how you feel about the idea of reincarnation. I think what he actually says, maybe to cover himself a little bit, is I think everybody believes in this to some degree. It makes it clear, I think, pretty quickly that he's either agnostic or an atheist, or is kind of questions the idea of God a little bit, and we get into that some as it goes along. And he says, I don't really understand the idea of reincarnation. He says, centuries ago there were a lot fewer people on the earth. When you had, fewer than 1 billion people, 300 million, even up to 1 billion people, and then now we have 6 billion people on the planet. It's even more than that now. Where did all these souls come from? If everybody's reincarnated, then how are there so many more of us, and yet it's all still reincarnated souls? I had never really given that any thought before. It's kind of that Death and Thanos idea from Infinity Gauntlet, where you have this imbalance in the universe, and that's the whole reason that Death in that book is different, of course, with the Thanos in the movies. We have that in that book. You have the idea of this like cosmic imbalance, where there are more people living now than have ever died. It's kind of that idea. How could you have reincarnation? Never thought of that before. And then there's this bit where Celine starts just asking like really blunt, serious questions about things that we just do and never think about. Where she's like, why is it so important for people to keep relationships going forever with as many people as you're going to meet in your life, and with people who you may not continue on the same track with, or you might drift apart because your interests change, or you both change for some reason. Why is it so important for us to try to hang on to relationships forever? And that resonated with me a lot as well. I have that too, and I can't really answer that question. I'm not sure why I personally am so resistant to change sometimes. And this was just a really kind of personal experience for me. It's hard not to just kind of like you become an open book and start talking about like my own personality quirks and my own like weird assumptions about life and things, talking about this movie. And there's a lot more, analysis and in particular conversations that I'd love to talk about. But I've already given too much away about this movie. I think, like I said, it's a thing that everybody should consider sitting down and watching. A long time ago, I mentioned that it's interesting the way this movie is written. I should also mention that, so this is Ethan Hawke, who totally disappears in this role, and it's a obviously really young, really early Ethan Hawke role, and then Julie Delpy, who I didn't remember from anything. She's been in a lot of stuff, but I don't know how much I've seen her in. They, of course, it goes without saying, have wonderful chemistry. I believe every second of the romance and the evolution of that, and I adore them together, and it really deeply mattered to me that they found some way to, continue their relationship, and wondering if that was going to happen. I was weirdly invested, but the both of them also have, I don't know if they actually got writing credit on this, but they definitely did writing on this movie. They got together and made the film more of a romance than it was before. Apparently, initially, the script was a lot more of just these two, kind of like I said, more of a dinner with Andre kind of thing, where they just have these interesting conversations, but there wasn't really enough of an evolution to their relationship. It wasn't really much of a romance, and they brought that to it, and it's what elevates it from a really interesting and thought-provoking movie to a really personal movie, and at the end of the day, I think a brilliant movie. So all four of the people who wrote on this movie clearly brought a lot of themselves and personal experiences to this, and it really shows. Like I said, it's all about the genuineness in buying these as real people and feeling like you're looking at something that is really going on. Certainly not everybody is as introspective as these two characters. Like I said, you can certainly tell that that this is scripted, and it's sort of like an Aaron Sorkin thing where these characters are maybe I could see a person looking at this and saying these characters are a little bit too articulate. I don't necessarily buy that we're getting as many words into an hour and a half as we are, or that some of these thoughts are as well articulated and put together and thought out as they are. I think it really just depends on the people. One of the few complaints that I have about this movie is that sometimes when we do go to the few other supporting characters that we go to in this movie, they sometimes sound too much like the main characters in the film, where you can see the writers who wrote these characters also in them, where it's just everything, or everybody in this is kind of that introspective. There's a scene that played to me, and maybe I would appreciate it more on a second viewing because I don't totally know what it's getting at. There's a scene that plays almost like it's making fun of the piece itself, where we go into a restaurant and we jump to several other couples of people, not all romantic couples, but just people in booths having conversations, and they're all having these like deeply, again, introspective kinds of conversations about various topics. And like maybe just everybody in Vienna is this intellectual. Maybe the idea is it's sort of a European thing, but that did take me out just a little bit. And again, the movie does avoid cliche with the romance on every single level. There's a lot of places where it easily could have gotten overly sappy or melodramatic, and it just doesn't. And that's one of the most impressive things about the movie. There is, the first kiss. There's a scene where they're in a record store listening to a song that is insanely romantic, with a palpable romantic tension that just got me, and a wonderful song choice that could have seemed too on the nose and is about what's going on right then, but doesn't feel like it's narrating the scene. That was just wonderful. Their kind of first fight scene is really thoughtful. Everything about that relationship is totally genuine and totally works. The only place where it gets to a little bit of a trite place to me is actually in just a little bit of the philosophizing, where there is at least one scene, I can't think of any others, so I might just be talking about a single sequence, where they're talking about mortality, and they'll bring up things like it's the first time anybody's thought of it, or like just for these, and maybe these characters are a little bit naive just because they're younger. Maybe this isn't a problem, but I did feel like there was a place where the movie itself was kind of acting like it was landing on a profound idea that is just a thing that you hear all the time that everybody talks about. I think even in 1995 this was true. There's a place where Ethan Hawke's character Jesse, I'm pretty sure it's him, is talking about how death is important, and like maybe we shouldn't live forever because knowing that there are that life is finite, makes the days that we have more precious. And it's weird that at no point does Celine, kind of call him on that. It's like, yeah, like that's obvious. We've all thought of that, because so many of the ideas they come up with feel really specific to them, and again, not always things that I've thought of, or not in exactly the way that they're bringing them up. I think some of it might have just been a word choice issue in that particular scene, where he was just saying a thing that I feel like I've heard from a lot of different people, and it didn't feel real unique to his perspective. But those are really the only complaints I can lob at it. I did not have pacing issues with this movie at all, even though it's so much about just a bunch of conversations. Like I said, there's a real, evolution to the relationship and to the evening that really captured my attention and my imagination, and I kind of didn't want the thing to end. And I felt like I was losing track of time the same way they were. I mean, I felt like it doesn't just capture that feeling and that experience of the first date so much. It felt, like I said earlier, it made me feel like I was having one, and it meant a lot to me. Like I said, I haven't flipped my sign green yet. I should have done that earlier, but this movie was really special to me, and I am very interested to show it to my wife. And I hope she likes it even half as much as I did, honestly. I don't know if this will be her thing. I'm much more of a character study guy than my wife is, but I don't know. I hope we're able to have a little bit of a romantic time with it, because it was very special to me, and I kind of wish she'd been sitting next to me when I was watching it. Anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a longer one. I could have talked for another hour about this. I have a lot to say about this, and it's a thing that I'm sure I'll have more analysis of, and things that I would want to say after I see this more times. Maybe at some point I'll come back and revisit these after I've seen the other two. I'd love to do that. But anyway, let me know in the comments if you've seen this, and if you agree with me that it's as great and brilliant as I think it is, or if you think that it's one of those kind of overhyped, overappreciated things. And in the meantime, I will be back with you again, hopefully soon, for another You Made Me Watch. My life is real up in the air right now. My wife is going to deliver twins in the next couple of weeks, and so I don't know how many more videos I'm going to be able to make before that. I'm about to go on a full-on hiatus. I'm on kind of a semi-hiatus right now, even though this week we put out quite a few videos. I keep saying that, but I haven't been doing, regular live shows and things. We'll probably do one more live show next week before I go on hiatus, so look forward to that. But in the meantime, once again, I was Captain Logan, and I will see you again real soon. Bye, folks.